The explosion rocked the human Pandronian embassy on Nexus, and only one human soldier dared to save the wounded alien girls. Sergeant Greg Parker sprinted toward the chaos, his heart pounding as he pushed through the panicked crowd. Smoke billowed from the shattered windows, and screams pierced the air. The fate of interstellar relations hung in the balance, and Greg knew he had to act fast. As he approached the crumbling structure, Greg felt an overwhelming urge to flee. The injured Pandronians inside were emitting powerful pheromones, triggering a primal fear response in nearly every species present. Even trained medical personnel stumbled away, their faces contorted in terror. But Greg gritted his teeth and pressed on, his human physiology giving him a unique advantage in this crisis. Inside the embassy, Greg's eyes watered from the acrid smoke. He scanned the debris-strewn lobby, spotting several Pandronian diplomats lying motionless amidst the rubble. Their silvery blood pooled on the floor, reflecting the flickering emergency lights. Greg's gaze locked onto a figure trapped beneath a fallen pillar. Ambassador Altair, her stunning alien features marred by pain and fear. Greg rushed to her side, his enhanced strength allowing him to lift the heavy debris. As he freed the ambassador, he noticed the telltale signs of a sophisticated explosive device. His military training kicked in, and he realized with a sinking feeling that this was no accident. The Zorgon Collective, a rival alien faction, had long sought to disrupt human Pandronian relations. This attack bore all the hallmarks of their handiwork. Cradling Ambassador Altair in his arms, Greg carried her toward the exit. The building groaned ominously around them, and he could hear the distinct whine of an overloading power core. If it detonated, the entire diplomatic district would be leveled. Greg knew he had to act fast to prevent further catastrophe. As he emerged from the embassy, Greg was met with a sea of terrified faces. Humans and aliens alike stared at him in awe and confusion. How could this lone soldier withstand the paralyzing effects of the Pandronian pheromones? Greg ignored their stares and barked orders for medical assistance, his voice cutting through the chaos. In the distance, angry shouts erupted as accusations flew between human and Pandronian officials. The fragile alliance between their species teetered on the brink of collapse. Greg realized that his actions in the coming moments could either salvage or destroy years of diplomatic progress. Setting Ambassador Altair down gently, Greg turned back toward the unstable embassy. He had to find a way to stabilize the power core before it was too late. As he re-entered the building, his mind raced with possibilities. There had to be more to this attack than met the eye. The sophistication of the explosive device, the timing of the blast, it all pointed to a deeper conspiracy. Greg's instincts told him that rogue elements from both human and Pandronian societies might be involved. As he navigated the treacherous path to the power core, he kept his eyes peeled for any evidence that could unravel the plot. The fate of interstellar peace now rested on his shoulders, and he was determined not to let it slip away. With time running out and the effects of the fear-inducing pheromones growing stronger, Greg steeled himself for the challenges ahead. He had to stabilize the core, save the injured Pandronians, and uncover the truth behind the attack. It was a daunting task, but if anyone could do it, it was a human soldier like Greg Parker. As he worked, he knew that his actions would prove humanity's worth as allies to the technologically advanced Pandronians, or doom both species to an era of mistrust and conflict. Greg's heart raced as he re-entered the embassy, his enhanced strength and commitment pushing him forward, despite the growing intensity of the fear-inducing pheromones. He navigated through smoke-filled corridors, searching for the power core. Time was running out. Suddenly, the building shuddered violently. Greg stumbled, catching himself against a wall as chunks of ceiling crashed down around him. He realized with growing dread that the structure was becoming increasingly unstable. The whine of the overloading power core grew louder, a high-pitched scream that set his teeth on edge. As Greg rounded a corner, he spotted the entrance to the core chamber. The reinforced door had been blown off its hinges, revealing a scene of destruction within. Sparks showered from damaged consoles, and the air crackled with energy. In the center of the room, the power core pulsed with an ominous red light. Greg approached cautiously, his military training kicking in as he assessed the situation. The core's containment field was failing, and he estimated they had minutes at most before catastrophic failure. He scanned the room, searching for anything that could help him stabilize the reactor. His eyes landed on an emergency shutdown panel, partially obscured by fallen debris. Greg rushed over, shoving aside twisted metal and shattered plastics. The panel flickered to life as he cleared it, but the controls were unlike anything he'd seen before. Pandronian technology was notoriously complex, and Greg realized he was out of his depth. A groan from nearby caught his attention. Greg turned to see a Pandronian technician pinned beneath a fallen support beam. The alien's silvery blood pooled around him, but his eyes were alert and fixed on Greg. "Human," the technician rasped, his translator struggling to function. "You must initialize failsafe sequence." Greg knelt beside the injured Pandronian. "How? I don't understand your technology." The technician's many-fingered hand reached out, grasping Greg's wrist. Suddenly, Greg's mind was flooded with images and sensations, schematics, procedures, and complex equations. He gasped, staggering back as the alien's touch broke. "Go," the technician whispered. "Save others." With newfound understanding, Greg turned back to the control panel. His fingers flew over the alien interface, inputting commands and overrides. The core's angry whine began to subside, its pulsing light fading from red to a calm blue. As the immediate danger passed, Greg's attention returned to the injured Pandronian. He carefully lifted the support beam, freeing the technician. "I need to get you out of here," Greg said, preparing to lift the alien. The technician shook his head weakly. "No time. More danger. Ambassador." Greg's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? What other danger?" But the Pandronian had lost consciousness. Greg knew he couldn't leave the technician behind. He hoisted the alien over his shoulder, grunting under the unexpected weight, and made his way back through the crumbling embassy. As Greg emerged into the chaos outside, he was met with a flurry of activity. Medical teams had arrived, setting up a triage area nearby. He handed off the unconscious technician to a group of paramedics, then scanned the area for Ambassador Altair. He spotted Dr. Emily Cooper, the embassy's physician, waving urgently from the entrance of a nearby bunker. Greg sprinted over, ducking inside the reinforced structure. "Sergeant Parker," Dr. Cooper said, her voice tight with stress. "We need your help. The ambassador's condition is critical." Greg followed her through the bunker's corridors, passing injured staff members and harried medical personnel. They entered a makeshift medical bay where Ambassador Altair lay on a bed, her silvery skin pale and lifeless. Dr. Cooper quickly explained the situation, the ambassador's unique physiology, the protective hibernation state, and the need for a complex healing ritual. Greg listened intently, his mind turning from the implications. "You're the only one who can do this, Sergeant," Dr. Cooper said, meeting his eyes. "The rest of us, we can't get close enough. The pheromones—" Greg nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He approached the ambassador's bedside, studying her alien features. Despite her injuries, she was breathtakingly beautiful in an otherworldly way. "What do I need to do?" Greg asked, steeling himself for what was to come. Dr. Cooper began explaining the intricacies of the ritual when alarms blared throughout the bunker. The doctor's eyes widened in fear. "The Zorgons," she whispered. "They've breached the outer defenses." Greg's military instincts kicked in. He quickly scanned the room, assessing potential defensive positions. "Barricade the door," he ordered, already moving to push a heavy cabinet into place. "Use whatever you can find." As Dr. Cooper and the other medical staff scrambled to secure the room, Greg returned to Ambassador Altair's side. He knew he had to act fast. "I'm sorry, Ambassador," he murmured, carefully removing her torn diplomatic robes. "But I have to do this to save you." Greg stripped off his own shirt, acutely aware of the sounds of battle growing closer. He took a deep breath, then lowered himself onto the bed, pressing his skin against the ambassador's. The moment they touched, Greg's world exploded into a kaleidoscope of alien sensations. His mind was flooded with fragmented images, crystal cities spanning entire planets, vast fleets of starships, and strange, beautiful creatures unlike anything he'd ever imagined. He gasped, nearly pulling away from the overwhelming experience. But he forced himself to maintain contact, focusing on the task at hand. Greg could feel a warmth spreading from his body into the ambassador's, and her silvery skin began to glow faintly. Outside the medical bay, the sounds of combat intensified. Gunfire and explosions echoed through the bunker, punctuated by alien screeches and human shouts. Greg knew that Captain Sarah Martinez and her security team were fighting desperately to hold off the Zorgon attackers, but he wasn't sure how long they could last. As the healing ritual progressed, Greg felt a strange connection forming between himself and Ambassador Altair. It was as if their minds were slowly intertwining, sharing thoughts and memories across the vast gulf of their different species. Suddenly, the ambassador's eyes fluttered open. Her iridescent pupils focused on Greg's face, and her expression shifted from confusion to fear. She tried to speak, but her words came out as a series of melodic chirps and trills. "It's okay," Greg said softly, trying to project calm and reassurance. "You're safe. I'm here to help you." The ambassador's gaze darted around the room, taking in the makeshift barricades and the sounds of battle outside. Her body tensed, and Greg could feel her trying to pull away. "Please," he said, maintaining their physical connection. "The ritual isn't complete. You're still in danger." Whether she understood his words or simply sensed his intentions, the ambassador relaxed slightly. She locked eyes with Greg again, and he felt a surge of alien emotions wash over him. Gratitude, curiosity, and something else he couldn't quite identify. The door to the medical base shuddered under a heavy impact. Greg knew their time was running out. He focused all his energy on completing the healing ritual, willing his strength and vitality into the ambassador's battered body. As the Zorgon forces drew ever closer to breaching their sanctuary, Greg realized that the fate of not just Ambassador Altair, but perhaps the entire human Pandronian alliance rested in his hands. He had to find a way to protect her, complete the ritual, and somehow turn the tide of this battle. With the sounds of impending doom growing louder, Greg steeled himself for what was to come. He knew that the next few moments would test him like never before, pushing the limits of his courage, strength, and newfound connection with the alien ambassador. The connection between them pulsed with an otherworldly energy, transcending the chaos around them. Suddenly, the door to the medical bay buckled under a tremendous impact. Metal screeched as Zorgon claws tore through the reinforced barrier. Greg's muscles tensed, ready for action, but he knew he couldn't break contact with the ambassador. "Dr. Cooper," Greg called out, "we need more time." The physician grabbed a makeshift weapon, a broken IV stand, and positioned herself near the failing door. "Just finish it, Sergeant," she shouted back, her voice strained but determined. Greg refocused on Ambassador Altair, pouring every ounce of his strength into the healing ritual. The Pandronian's silvery skin began to glow brighter, pulsing with an ethereal light. Her eyes, still fixed on Greg's, widened in a mix of fear and wonder. The door finally gave way with a thunderous crash. Zorgon warriors poured into the room, their insectoid bodies gleaming with bioarmor. Dr. Cooper swung her improvised weapon, connecting with a satisfying crunch, but she was quickly overwhelmed. Greg's heart raced as he heard the sounds of combat mere feet away. He prepared to break off the ritual and defend the ambassador, but her hands suddenly gripped his arm with surprising strength. "No," Ambassador Altair said, her voice a melodic trill that somehow conveyed meaning to Greg. "Complete." Trusting in her, Greg redoubled his efforts. The glow emanating from the ambassador intensified, filling the room with a soft, pulsating light. The advancing Zorgons hesitated, their compound eyes reflecting the strange radiance. In that moment of confused stillness, Captain Sarah Martinez and her security team burst into the room from a side entrance. They took advantage of the Zorgon's momentary paralysis, quickly disarming and subduing the stunned attackers. As the last Zorgon was secured, Greg felt a surge of energy pass between himself and Ambassador Altair. The glow faded, and he knew instinctively that the healing ritual was complete. He helped the Pandronian to her feet, supporting her as she swayed slightly. What was that?" Greg asked, still reeling from the intensity of their connection. Ambassador Altair's iridescent eyes met his, a look of wonder on her alien features. "A gift," she said, her translator device now functioning. "Long forgotten by my people." Captain Martinez approached, her weapon still at the ready. "Sergeant Parker, status report?" Before Greg could respond, alarms blared throughout the bunker. A computerized voice echoed through the corridors. "Warning, power core critical, meltdown imminent, evacuate immediately." Greg's mind raced, processing the new threat. The initial explosion, he realized aloud. It must have damaged the core's containment systems. Ambassador Altair stepped forward, her posture regal despite her recent ordeal. "If the core destabilizes, it won't just destroy this facility. The reaction could devastate a significant portion of the planet's surface." The gravity of the situation settled over the room. Greg knew what had to be done. "We need a team to stabilize that core," he said, looking at Captain Martinez. "I volunteer to lead it." Martinez nodded grimly. "I'll gather our best technicians." "I'm coming with you," Ambassador Altair declared, her tone brooking no argument. Greg started to protest, but the look in the Pandronian's eyes stopped him. There was a dedication there, and something else, a sense of shared purpose that had been forged in the crucible of their recent experience. "Very well," Greg acquiesced, "but we'll need Pandronian engineers too. This tech is beyond human expertise." As they quickly assembled their team, Greg's comm unit crackled to life. A voice, tense with urgency, came through. "Sergeant Parker, this is Earth Command. The Zorgon attack was just the beginning. We have intel suggesting a larger plot to destabilize the entire sector. Multiple worlds are at risk. Whatever's happening there, it's part of something much bigger." Greg exchanged a look with Ambassador Altair, seeing his own mix of concern and drive mirrored in her alien features. "Understood, Command," he replied. "We'll handle the immediate crisis here and then. We'll be ready for whatever comes next." With their hastily assembled team of humans and Pandronians, Greg and Ambassador Altair prepared to leave the relative safety of the bunker. The distant rumble of the destabilizing power core reverberated through the structure, a constant reminder of the ticking clock they faced. As they reached the bunker's exit, Greg paused, turning to the ambassador. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "The radiation levels out there—" Ambassador Altair placed a many-fingered hand on Greg's arm, the touch sending a small spark of that strange energy between them. "My people are more resistant to radiation than yours," she said. "And this gift we've awakened, I believe it will help us navigate the dangers ahead." Greg nodded, feeling a growing sense of trust in this alien being he'd been so intimately connected to. He addressed the mixed team of humans and Pandronians. "All right, everyone, we're heading into an extremely hazardous environment. Stay close, follow orders, and let's save this planet." With a hiss of decompression, the bunker doors slid open. Greg and Ambassador Altair stepped out first, leading their team into the irradiated chaos of the damaged embassy. The air shimmered with heat and energy, casting an eerie glow over the destruction around them. As they navigated through collapsed corridors and sparking equipment, Greg couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was just the beginning. The Earth Command's warning echoed in his mind, hinting at a vast conspiracy that threatened not just this world, but many others. He glanced at Ambassador Altair, who moved with a new grace and purpose, her body still emanating a faint, calming glow. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Greg knew that this unlikely partnership between human and Pandronian would be key to facing them. The team pressed on towards the heart of the embassy, where the unstable power core awaited their desperate attempt to prevent catastrophe. With each step, the danger grew, but so did their grit to succeed, not just for themselves, but for the future of interstellar peace. Alliance would be key to facing them. The team pressed on towards the heart of the embassy, where the unstable power core awaited their desperate attempt to prevent catastrophe. With each step, the danger grew, but so did their grit to succeed. As they navigated through the damaged corridors, Greg noticed the air becoming thicker with an eerie, shimmering haze. Pockets of intense radiation pulsed around them, causing their radiation detectors to screech in alarm. "Hold!" Greg called out, raising his hand to halt the team's progress. He turned to Ambassador Altair, her silvery skin still emitting a faint glow. "Ambassador, we can't proceed without protection. Our suits won't withstand these levels." Altair's iridescent eyes narrowed in concentration. She raised her arms, and a ripple of energy emanated from her body, expanding outward to envelop the team. The air around them seemed to crystallize, forming a translucent, shimmering barrier. "Fascinating," Dr. Cooper murmured, running her hand along the energy field. "Some kind of radiation-absorbing force field." "A protective ability of my people," Altair explained, her voice tinged with wonder. "Long dormant, but awakened by our connection, Sergeant Parker." Greg nodded, pushing aside the implications of their growing bond. "It's working. Radiation levels are dropping inside the field. Let's move." They pressed forward, Altair maintaining the protective bubble as they navigated the treacherous path to the power core. The corridors grew increasingly unstable, with support beams groaning under the strain and sparks showering from ruptured conduits. Finally, they reached the power core chamber. The scene before them was one of awe-inspiring chaos. The massive core, a pillar of swirling energy, pulsed erratically. Arcs of raw power lashed out, scorching the surrounding equipment and leaving deep gouges in the reinforced walls. "By the stars," a Pandronian engineer whispered, his translator barely picking up the odd words. Greg quickly assessed the situation. "Okay, team, we need to stabilize that core now. Human techs focus on the coolant systems. Pandronian engineers work on containing the energy fluctuations. Dr. Cooper, monitor radiation levels. Ambassador Altair and I will provide protection where needed." The team sprang into action, each member applying their expertise to the monumental task at hand. Greg and Altair moved around the chamber, extending localized protective fields to shield the workers from the most dangerous energy discharges. Minutes ticked by, the tension in the room mounting with each passing second. Sweat beaded on Greg's forehead as he maintained constant vigilance, ready to throw himself between his team and danger at a moment's notice. Suddenly, a deafening crack echoed through the chamber. A console exploded in a shower of sparks, sending a Pandronian technician flying backward. The core's pulsations increased rapidly, and alarms blared throughout the facility. "We're losing containment," Dr. Cooper shouted over the din. "The coolant system is failing." Greg's mind raced, assessing their options. His eyes landed on a manual override panel near the core itself, partially obscured by a curtain of arcing energy. He knew what had to be done. "I need to realign the primary coolant array manually," Greg announced, already moving towards the panel. "It's our only shot at stabilizing the core." Altair's hand gripped his arm, her touch sending a jolt of energy through him. "The radiation levels there are lethal to humans," she said, her alien features contorted with concern. "We don't have a choice," Greg replied, meeting her gaze. "I have to try." To his surprise, Altair's grip tightened. "Then I'm coming with you. My physiology is more resistant, and my protective field might buy you the time you need." Greg wanted to argue to protect the ambassador from danger, but he knew she was right. They were in this together now, human and Pandronian united against impossible odds. With a nod of agreement, they approached the core. The heat was intense, the air shimmering with deadly radiation. Altair's protective field strained against the onslaught, but held. Greg reached the panel and began the complex process of realigning the coolant array. His hands moved with practiced precision, but the task was grueling. Sweat poured down his face, and he could feel the radiation seeping through Altair's weakening field. As he worked, Greg became acutely aware of Altair's presence beside him. In the confined space, their bodies were in close proximity, and he could sense a change in her. He glanced over and saw her silvery skin flushing with a soft, pulsating glow. Her eyes were wide, fixed on him with an intensity that momentarily made him forget the danger surrounding them. Pushing aside the distraction, Greg refocused on his task. With a final twist of a stubborn valve, he felt the system click into place. The core's pulsations began to slow, its angry red glow fading to a more stable blue. Relief washed over Greg, quickly followed by exhaustion. The radiation exposure and physical strain caught up with him all at once, and he felt his knees buckle. As darkness crept into the edges of his vision, he was vaguely aware of Altair catching him, her cool, alien hands cradling his body. "Greg!" Altair's voice seemed to come from far away. He felt a surge of energy flow into him, different from before but unmistakably linked to their connection. Slowly, Greg's vision cleared. He found himself looking up into Altair's iridescent eyes, filled with a mix of concern and something else he couldn't quite identify. Her hands were pressed against his chest, a soft glow emanating from where their skin met. What did you do?" Greg asked, his strength returning. "I used our connection to stabilize your condition," Altair explained, her voice carrying a hint of awe. "I've never attempted healing a human before. Your physiology is intriguing." Before Greg could respond, Captain Martinez's voice crackled over the comm system. "Sergeant Parker, Ambassador Altair, we have an urgent situation. The Zorgon Collective has launched a full-scale invasion of Nexus. The embassy attack was just a diversion." Greg and Altair exchanged a look of shared tenacity. They had prevented one disaster, but an even greater challenge now loomed before them. As they rose to their feet, still connected by touch and their growing bond, both knew that the true test of their unlikely partnership was just beginning. As they rose to their feet, still connected by touch and their growing bond, both knew that the true test of their unlikely partnership was just starting. In the days that followed, Greg and Ambassador Altair found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The successful repulsion of the Zorgon invasion and the stabilization of the embassy's power core had not only saved Nexus, but also ignited intense curiosity about their unprecedented alien-human bonding process. News of their unique connections spread rapidly through both human and Pandronian channels. Greg noticed the way other diplomats and military personnel now looked at them, a mix of awe, suspicion, and barely concealed fascination. He couldn't blame them. He himself was still grappling with the implications of what had transpired between him and Altair. Their superiors were equally intrigued. Within a week, Greg and Altair received a joint communique from Earth Command and the Pandronian High Council. They were being summoned to Pandora Prime, the Pandronian homeworld, for a high-level diplomatic meeting. As Greg packed his gear, Captain Martinez approached him. "Sergeant, I'll be accompanying you as part of the human delegation," she said, her expression a mix of pride and concern. "This is big, Parker. The brass is calling it a potential breakthrough in interspecies relations." Greg nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Understood, Captain. Let's hope we can live up to their expectations." The journey to Pandora Prime was a blur of debriefings and preparation. Greg spent hours with Ambassador Altair, discussing their experiences and trying to understand the nature of their bond. Despite the intimacy they had shared, there was still so much about each other's species that remained a mystery. As their ship entered Pandora Prime's atmosphere, Greg pressed his face to the viewport, his breath catching at the alien beauty below. The planet's surface was a tapestry of deep purples and shimmering silvers, dotted with bioluminescent flora that pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm. The Pandronian cities were a marvel of organic architecture, crystalline spires seamlessly blending with living, breathing structures. Upon landing, Greg was immediately struck by the unique demographics of the Pandronian population. The vast majority were female, a result of their species' distinctive reproductive biology. He felt their eyes on him as he disembarked, some curious, others wary of his human presence. They were greeted by a delegation of Pandronian officials, led by a tall, willowy figure introduced as Dr. Zara, the leading expert on interspecies biology. Her iridescent eyes scanned Greg with undisguised interest. "Welcome to Pandora Prime," Dr. Zara said, her translator conveying a mix of excitement and scientific curiosity. "We are most eager to observe your unique connection with Ambassador Altair." As they were led to their quarters, Dr. Zara explained the purpose of their visit. "The High Council requests a demonstration of your peacekeeping ability," she said. "However, I must warn you, the procedure we have in mind will require a level of physical intimacy that goes beyond your previous experiences." Greg felt Altair stiffen beside him. He glanced at her, noticing a flicker of her initial fear and hesitation regarding human physiology resurface in her eyes. He reached out, gently touching her arm in a gesture of reassurance. "We'll face this together, Ambassador," he said softly, "whatever it takes." The next day, they were escorted to the Crystal Amphitheater, a massive structure that seemed to be grown rather than built. Its walls sparkled with an inner light, designed to amplify and broadcast energy across the planet. As Greg and Altair took their positions at the center of the amphitheater, surrounded by the watchful eyes of the High Council and numerous scientists, Greg felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. He looked at Altair, seeing his own emotions mirrored in her alien features. "Are you ready?" he asked. Altair nodded, her silvery skin already beginning to pulse with a soft glow. "Let us show them what we can do, Greg." They began the bonding process, their bodies drawing closer together. The initial contact sent a jolt through Greg's system, far more intense than their previous connections. He gasped as Altair's skin erupted in waves of bioluminescence, her body emitting powerful pheromones that made his head swim. Suddenly, Greg's mind was flooded with vivid flashes of Pandronian memories and emotions. He saw glimpses of Altair's childhood, felt the joy of her first flight, the pain of loss, the wonder of scientific discovery. Each memory was accompanied by a kaleidoscope of sensations he had no human reference for, yet understood on a fundamental level. Altair, meanwhile, found herself overwhelmed by the unfamiliar sensations of human intimacy. Her initial terror gave way to a complex mix of curiosity and pleasure as she explored the nuances of Greg's physiology through their deepening connection. As their bond intensified, Greg became aware of a change in their surroundings. The crystal amphitheater was resonating with their energy, its walls pulsing in sync with Altair's bioluminescence. Through their shared consciousness, he could sense the phenomenon spreading beyond the amphitheater, reaching out across Pandora Prime. The peacekeeping energy built to a crescendo, and Greg felt as if his very being was expanding, intertwining with Altair and extending across the planet. In that moment of perfect unity, he understood the true potential of their bond, not just as a weapon or a shield, but as a bridge between their species. As the energy wave reached its peak, Greg and Altair collapsed, their bodies still entwined. The last thing Greg saw before losing consciousness was the awestruck faces of the Pandronian High Council, their eyes wide with wonder and possibility. Neither Greg nor Altair were aware of the breathtaking display visible from space, as the bioluminescent flora of Pandora Prime glowed in perfect harmony with their connection. Nor did they see the Zorgon scout ship that witnessed this incredible phenomenon, immediately transmitting the information back to its fleet. As Greg and Altair lay unconscious, their bodies still intimately connected, Captain Martinez received an urgent communication. Her face paled as she listened to the report, her eyes darting to the vulnerable forms of Greg and Altair. "Sound the alarm," she ordered, her voice tight with urgency. "We have incoming hostiles. The Zorgons are back, and they're heading straight for Pandora Prime." Prime. The words hung in the air, their weight crushing the brief moment of triumph. Greg's eyes snapped open, his body still tingling from the intense connection with Altair. He found himself sprawled on the floor of the crystal amphitheater, the Pandronian ambassador's silvery form intertwined with his own. "Altair," he croaked, his voice hoarse. "We need to move. Now." Her iridescent eyes fluttered open, confusion quickly replaced by sharp focus as she processed the situation. They disentangled themselves, bodies protesting after the intense bonding session. "The Zorgons," Altair said, her translator struggling to keep up with her rapid speech. "They must have detected our energy signature." Greg nodded grimly, accepting a hand up from Captain Martinez. The human officer's face was drawn tight with concern. "The High Council is gathering in the Central Defense Command Center," Martinez reported. "We need to move quickly. Whatever you two did, it's got the Zorgons spooked enough to launch a full-scale attack." They hurried through the crystalline corridors of the Pandronian capital, the air thick with tension. Outside, the bioluminescent flora pulsed erratically, reflecting the planet's growing unrest. The command center was a hive of activity when they arrived. Pandronian officials darted between holographic displays, their usually calm demeanor replaced by barely suppressed panic. Dr. Zara approached them, her eyes wide. "The bonding process. It was more powerful than we anticipated. Our sensors detected an energy wave that propagated across the entire planet." "And straight into Zorgon space, apparently," Greg muttered. A towering Pandronian with elaborate silver markings stepped forward. "I am High Counselor Nyara," she introduced herself. "Sergeant Parker, Ambassador Altair, your demonstration was unprecedented, but now we face an imminent threat. Our defenses are not prepared for a full-scale Zorgon invasion." Greg's mind raced. "The energy we generated during the bonding," he said, turning to Altair, "could we use it as a weapon against the Zorgons?" Dr. Zara shook her head vigorously. "Absolutely not. The consequences could be catastrophic. We have no way of controlling or directing that energy. It could harm both sides indiscriminately." A loud alarm blared through the command center. On the main view screen, a swarm of Zorgon ships pierced Pandora Prime's atmosphere, their angular forms a stark contrast to the organic shapes of the Pandronian world. "We're out of time," Captain Martinez announced. "We need to launch every fighter we have." High Counselor Nyara nodded grimly. "Agreed. Captain, you will lead a joint human-Pandronian squadron. We must buy time for our ground forces to mobilize." As the command center erupted into action, Greg turned to Altair. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. "We have to try again," Greg said softly. "A deeper bond. It might be our only chance." Altair's skin rippled with apprehension, but she nodded. "Yes, but where? We need a place that can amplify and direct the energy." Dr. Zara, overhearing their conversation, interjected. "The crystal amphitheater. We can modify it to focus the energy outward. But I must warn you, the intensity required, it could be dangerous for both of you." Greg met Altair's gaze once more. "We don't have a choice," he said. They raced back to the amphitheater, the sounds of battle already echoing in the distance. Pandronian scientists worked feverishly to adjust the crystal structure, creating a channeling system for the energy they hoped Greg and Altair could generate. As they prepared to bond, Altair's hand trembled slightly in Greg's grasp. "I'm afraid," she admitted, her voice low. "Not of you, but of what this might do to us both." Greg squeezed her hand gently. "I know, but we're in this together, remember?" They began the bonding process, their bodies drawing close. The initial contact sent a shockwave through Greg's system, far more intense than before. He gasped as Altair's skin erupted in waves of bioluminescence, her body emitting powerful pheromones that made his head swim. Altair's eyes widened as unfamiliar sensations coursed through her. Her initial fear gave way to a complex mix of fascination and unexpected pleasure, as Greg's human physiology interacted with her alien body in ways she had never imagined possible. Outside, the battle for Pandora Prime raged. Captain Martinez's voice crackled over the comm system, reporting heavy resistance from the Zorgon forces. On the ground, Pandronian troops engaged with enemy soldiers who had managed to land, the planet's bioluminescent flora reacting to the conflict with chaotic pulses of light. As Greg and Altair's bond deepened, neither was aware of the changes rippling through the Pandronian population. A dormant genetic sequence, awakened by their intense connection, spread rapidly. Pandronian soldiers found themselves suddenly imbued with enhanced strength and reflexes. Their connection to the planet's ecosystem heightened to unprecedented levels. In the skies above, a Pandronian pilot gasped as she felt the branches of a massive bioluminescent tree respond to her thoughts, lashing out to entangle a Zorgon fighter. On the ground, troops manipulated waves of glowing spores to blind and disorient the invaders. The unexpected surge of power began to turn the tide of battle. Zorgon ships fell from the sky, their systems overwhelmed by the planet's natural defenses, now wielded with terrifying precision by the Pandronians. But the rapid genetic changes came at a cost. Some Pandronians, unable to control their new abilities, lashed out indiscriminately. Friendly fire incidents spiked as the chaos of enhanced abilities mixed with the frenzy of battle. In the crystal amphitheater, Greg and Altair reached a critical point in their bonding. Their combined energy formed a visible aura around them, pulsing in sync with the planet's core. The Pandronian scientists watched in awe as this energy began to spread across Pandora Prime, following the channeling system they had hastily constructed. As the energy wave expanded, it enveloped friend and foe alike. The out-of-control Pandronians found their abilities suddenly stabilized, while Zorgon weapons and ships began to malfunction en masse. The energy field continued to grow, pushing beyond the atmosphere of Pandora Prime. It engulfed several Zorgon capital ships, causing cascading system failures. Panic spread through the invasion force as ship after ship went dark or veered off course. In the command center, High Counselor Niara watched with a mix of awe and trepidation as the Zorgon fleet began a hasty retreat. "They're withdrawing," she announced, her voice thick with emotion. "We've won." But as the immediate threat receded, new concerns arose. Reports flooded in from across Pandora Prime of Pandronians exhibiting strange new behaviors and abilities. The genetic changes triggered by Greg and Altair's bond showed no signs of reversing. In the Crystal Amphitheater, the human and Pandronian slowly separated, both physically and mentally drained from the intense experience. As they struggled to regain their bearings, neither was aware of the profound changes their actions had set in motion, nor of the challenges that lay ahead for both their species. Altair's gaze lingered on Greg, her perspective irrevocably altered. The fear and hesitation she had once felt towards human physiology had been replaced by a deep curiosity and a growing, undeniable attraction. As Greg met her eyes, he sensed the shift in her demeanor, a new dimension added to their already complex relationship. Before they could speak, Dr. Zara burst into the amphitheater, her face a mask of concern. "You need to see this," she said urgently, gesturing for them to follow. "The High Council is convening an emergency session. What we've done here, it's changed everything." Greg and Altair exchanged a look of shared apprehension as they followed Dr. Zara out of the amphitheater. The battle might be over, but they both sensed that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. As Greg and Altair followed Dr. Zara out of the Crystal Amphitheater, they were immediately struck by the chaos unfolding around them. The corridors of the Pandronian capital, once a model of serene efficiency, now buzzed with frantic activity. Officials rushed past, their typically composed demeanors replaced by expressions of confusion and alarm. Upon entering the High Council chambers, Greg's eyes widened at the sight before him. Several council members were visibly changed, their silvery skin taking on a more textured appearance, almost human-like in its complexity. Some appeared distressed by their transformations, while others seemed fascinated, running their hands over their altered forms with a mix of wonder and apprehension. High Counselor Niara's voice cut through the din, her tone grave. "We are facing an unprecedented crisis. The energy released during the bonding process has triggered widespread genetic changes in our population. We must act swiftly to contain this evolution." Greg felt a knot form in his stomach as Niara's gaze fell upon him. "Sergeant Parker, while we are grateful for your role in repelling the Zorgon invasion, we cannot ignore the unintended consequences of your actions. Effective immediately, Pandora Prime will be placed under quarantine. No one leaves, no one enters. This includes you and your human delegation." Captain Martinez stepped forward, her face a mask of controlled anger. "With all due respect, Counselor, you can't just trap us here. We have rights, diplomatic agreements." Niara's eyes flashed. "Those agreements did not account for a planet-wide genetic crisis, Captain. I assure you, this decision was not made lightly." As the implications of their situation sank in, Greg noticed Altair shifting uncomfortably beside him. Her silvery skin seemed to ripple, almost as if it were trying to reshape itself. He reached out to steady her, but she flinched at his touch, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and something else. Dr. Zara approached them, her scientific curiosity barely concealing her concern. "Ambassador Altair, how are you feeling? Any unusual sensations?" Altair's voice trembled as she spoke. I'm not sure. My body feels strange, as if it's trying to become something else. And when Greg touched me just now, I don't know how to describe it." Greg watched in astonishment as Altair's form seemed to subtly shift before his eyes. Her typically fluid alien contours were becoming more defined, taking on a shape that was unsettlingly familiar. He realized with a start that her body was beginning to resemble a human female's, albeit with distinctly alien features. Dr. Zara's eyes lit up with scientific fervor. Fascinating. It appears that prolonged exposure to human DNA during the bonding process has activated a dormant evolutionary pathway in Pandronian genetics. Ambassador, you may be our key to understanding these changes. Over the next few days, the situation on Pandora Prime deteriorated rapidly. Reports flooded in from across the planet of Pandronians, experiencing sudden dramatic physical changes. The planet's ecosystem, intimately connected to Pandronian biology, began to show signs of instability. In some areas, the bioluminescent flora grew at an alarming rate, while in others, it withered and died. Greg found himself spending more time with Altair, both out of concern for her well-being and a growing sense of responsibility for the chaos their bonding had unleashed. He couldn't help but notice the way her newly formed features seemed to draw his gaze, eliciting unfamiliar and conflicting emotions. One evening, as they walked through a garden of pulsating, oversized flora, Dr. Zara approached them with a determined look on her face. "Sergeant Parker, Ambassador Altair, I have a proposal. It's controversial, but it may be our best chance at understanding and controlling these changes." Altair's newly formed eyebrows furrowed. "What kind of proposal, Doctor?" Dr. Zara took a deep breath. "We need to study the effects of human mating practices on your altered physiology, Ambassador, with you as our primary subject." Greg felt his face flush. "You want us to mate?" "Not necessarily full mating," Dr. Zara clarified quickly, "but intimate physical interactions, yes. We believe it could provide crucial data on how human contact affects the ongoing mutations." Altair's skin flickered with a range of colors, betraying her emotional turmoil. I'm not sure. The idea of human mating has always been terrifying to me. And yet," she glanced at Greg, her expression a mix of fear and curiosity. Greg swallowed hard, his mind racing. "This is a lot to process, Dr. Zara. We'll need time to think about it." As they left the garden, Greg noticed Captain Martinez engaged in a heated discussion with a group of Pandronian security officers. He caught snippets of their conversation, something about extremist groups and potential threats to the human delegation. The knot in his stomach tightened further as he realized their problems were just the beginning. That night, as Greg lay in his quarters, his thoughts kept returning to Altair. He couldn't shake the image of her changing form, the way her alien beauty was transforming into something both familiar and exotic. The idea of intimate contact with her sent a shiver down his spine, a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Little did he know that across the city, Altair was experiencing similar thoughts. As she examined her evolving body in a mirror, she felt a strange new warmth spreading through her at the thought of Greg's touch. The terror she had once felt at the idea of human intimacy was being replaced by an unfamiliar, yet not entirely unwelcome, sensation of desire. As Pandora Prime's 2 moons rose over the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the chaotic landscape, both Greg and Altair made their decisions. They would participate in Dr. Zara's study, diving into the unknown depths of interspecies intimacy. Neither of them could have predicted the profound consequences this choice would have, not just for themselves, but for the entire planet and the future of human Pandronian relations. In the shadows of the Pandronian capital, unbeknownst to all, a Zorgon infiltrator watched and waited. The chaos engulfing Pandora Prime had provided the perfect cover for their mission. Soon they would have the genetic secrets they sought, and the Zorgon Collective would reshape the galaxy in its image. As dawn broke over Pandora Prime, Greg found himself summoned to an urgent meeting with the Pandronian High Council. The chaos of the past few days had taken its toll, leaving him exhausted and on edge. He entered the council chambers to find a tense atmosphere, with High Counselor Niara at the center, her face etched with concern. "Sergeant Parker," she began, her voice grave, "the situation has escalated beyond our control. Our scientists believe that accelerating the human Pandronian intimacy study is our only hope for stabilizing the genetic mutations and restoring balance to our ecosystem." Greg's heart raced as he processed her words. Accelerating? How exactly? Dr. Zara stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with a mix of scientific curiosity and apprehension. We need you and Ambassador Altair to engage in full human mating practices, immediately. The room fell silent as Greg absorbed the implications of this request. His mind reeled with a whirlwind of emotions, shock, confusion, and an unexpected undercurrent of excitement. "Have you discussed this with Altair?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nyara nodded solemnly. "She has been informed and has agreed, despite her reservations. The fate of our planet hangs in the balance, Sergeant Parker. Will you do this?" Greg took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "I will." Within hours, Greg found himself standing before a specialized chamber within the Crystal Amphitheater. The room hummed with advanced monitoring equipment, each device designed to record every aspect of the unprecedented experiment about to take place. As the doors slid open, Greg's breath caught in his throat. Altair stood before him, her newly evolved form a mesmerizing blend of Pandronian and human features. Her silvery skin shimmered with an iridescent quality, while her body had taken on distinctly feminine curves. Her eyes, still alien in their depth and color, met his with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Greg," she said, her voice trembling slightly, I'm nervous." He approached her slowly, his hand outstretched. "It's okay, Altair. We'll take this one step at a time." As their fingers intertwined, a spark of energy passed between them. Altair gasped, her body shuddering at the contact. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse in response, the crystalline structure resonating with their touch. Slowly, carefully, Greg guided Altair to the center of the room. As they began to explore each other, Altair's initial terror gave way to fascination and then to pleasure. Her body responded to Greg's touch in ways she had never experienced before, each sensation new and intense. Outside the chamber, Dr. Zara and her team watched in awe as the monitors came alive with data. The energy readings from Greg and Altair's interaction were off the charts, far surpassing anything they had predicted. As the mating process intensified, a remarkable phenomenon began to unfold across Pandora Prime. The planet's bioluminescent flora pulsed in perfect synchronization with Greg and Altair's movements, creating a breathtaking light show visible from space. The Pandronian population, still grappling with their genetic mutations, felt a strange sense of calm wash over them. In the heart of the Crystal Amphitheater, Greg and Altair remained oblivious to the planet-wide reaction their intimacy had triggered. Lost in the intensity of their connection, they reached a crescendo of shared pleasure. At that moment, a massive surge of energy erupted from their bodies, radiating outward in a blinding wave. The energy pulse swept across Pandora Prime, its effects immediate and profound. Pandronians experiencing uncontrolled physical changes suddenly found their transformations slowing to a manageable rate. The erratic growth of the bioluminescent flora halted, the plant settling into a harmonious rhythm with the planet's natural cycles. As the energy wave reached the upper atmosphere, it coalesced into an impenetrable shield surrounding Pandora Prime. The planet's natural defenses, amplified beyond measure, created a barrier that no external force could penetrate. In the aftermath of their mating, Greg and Altair lay entwined, their bodies still tingling from the intense experience. Altair's eyes, wide with wonder, met Greg's gaze. "That was incredible," she breathed, her voice filled with awe. "I never imagined it could be like this." Greg smiled, stroking her cheek gently. "Are you all right?" Altair nodded, a newfound confidence in her expression. "More than all right. I feel complete, as if this is who I was always meant to be." As they basked in their post-mating glow, neither Greg nor Altair realized the full extent of what they had set in motion. Outside the Crystal Amphitheater, Pandora Prime was transforming. The genetic crisis that had threatened to tear the planet apart was now becoming a catalyst for a new era of evolution and understanding. In the Pandronian Security Headquarters, Captain Sarah Martinez received an urgent alert. The planet's newly stabilized bioluminescent flora had detected anomalies, patterns of disruption that could only be caused by non-Pandronian lifeforms. The Zorgon infiltrators, trapped by the energy shield and exposed by the planet's heightened defenses, had nowhere left to hide. Martinez's eyes narrowed as she processed the information. Looks like we've got some uninvited guests, she muttered, reaching for her communicator. Time to show these Zorgon spies what happens when you mess with Pandora Prime. As she began assembling a joint human-Pandronian strike team, Martinez couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. The hunt was on, and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. The hunt for the Zorgon infiltrators had barely concluded when Captain Sarah Martinez received another urgent alert. Her communicator buzzed with activity as she reviewed the incoming intelligence. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. "Damn it," she muttered, quickly tapping out orders to her team. "We've got a new threat." As Martinez mobilized her forces, Greg and Altair found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The Crystal Amphitheater, once a sanctuary for their intimate exploration, now bustled with preparations for their traditional Pandronian bonding ceremony. Altair, her newly evolved form still a source of wonder, guided Greg through the intricacies of the ritual. "The ceremony is more than just a union of two individuals," she explained, her voice tinged with excitement and nervousness. "It's a merging of essences, a connection that goes beyond the physical." Greg nodded, trying to absorb the complex details. His mind, however, kept drifting to the remarkable changes they had already experienced. The memory of their mating and its planet-wide effects still sent shivers down his spine. As they rehearsed the ceremonial movements, Dr. Zara approached, her face a mix of scientific curiosity and concern. "I've been analyzing the data from your previous interaction," she said, choosing her words carefully. "The energy output was unprecedented. This ceremony, combined with your unique physiologies, could produce even more remarkable results." Before Greg could respond, a deafening explosion rocked the amphitheater. The crystalline walls shuddered, and cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling. Panicked shouts filled the air as debris rained down. "What the hell?" Greg shouted, instinctively pulling Altair close. Martinez's voice crackled over the comm system. "We're under attack. Purist faction led by Council Member Zira. They're targeting the amphitheater." Chaos erupted as Pandronian security forces scrambled to defend the structure. Greg and Altair found themselves being ushered deeper into the amphitheater by a group of guards. "We need to get you to the ceremonial chamber," one of the guards shouted over the din. "It's the most secure location." As they raced through the corridors, Greg caught glimpses of the battle unfolding outside. The bioluminescent flora pulsed with an eerie red glow, serving as a natural alarm system. Martinez's joint human-Pandronian strike team engaged the Purist attackers, their movements perfectly synchronized with the pulsing flora. Reaching the ceremonial chamber, Greg and Altair rushed inside, the doors sealed behind them with a resonant hum. Suddenly, a shimmering field of energy enveloped the room. "What's happening?" Altair asked, her skin flickering with patterns of distress. Dr. Zara's voice came through a hidden speaker. "The planet's energy shield is interacting with the amphitheater's defenses. You're trapped in there, but it's also the safest place you can be right now." Greg's military training kicked in as he assessed their situation. "So we're safe, but we can't help the others?" "Not necessarily," Dr. Zara replied. "Remember the energy wave you generated before? We need you to do it again, but amplified through the bonding ceremony." Altair's eyes widened. "But we haven't completed the preparations, and the risks—" "I know," Dr. Zara cut in, "but it's our best chance to repel the attackers and stabilize the situation." Greg looked at Altair, seeing the fear and willpower in her alien eyes. He took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt despite its otherworldly texture. "Together?" he asked softly. Altair nodded, her fear giving way to persistence. "Together." They began the ceremony, their movements initially hesitant but growing more fluid as they fell into the ancient rhythms. The chamber around them seemed to come alive, pulsing with energy that matched their every gesture. Outside, the battle raged. Martinez's team fought valiantly, using their newfound hybrid abilities to manipulate the environment. Vines writhed and entangled Purist soldiers, while Martinez herself demonstrated impossible feats of strength and agility. Council Member Zira, her face contorted with rage, led a group of elite Purists towards the heart of the amphitheater. "We must stop this abomination," she shouted, her voice carrying over the chaos. Our species must remain pure. In the ceremonial chamber, Greg and Altair's bodies began to glow as the ritual reached its climax. Their forms seemed to blur, the line between human and Pandronian becoming indistinct. As they joined in the final, most intimate part of the ceremony, a surge of energy unlike anything they had experienced before coursed through them. The chamber erupted with light, a wave of pure energy radiating outward. It passed through the walls of the amphitheater as if they were insubstantial, washing over friend and foe alike. Zyra, mere steps away from breaching the inner sanctum, felt the wave hit her. She stumbled, her weapons falling useless to the ground. To her horror and fascination, she felt changes rippling through her body, the very transformations she had fought so hard against. The energy wave expanded, encompassing the entire battlefield. Purist Pandronians found their bodies shifting, dormant genetic code awakening. The planet-wide shield fluctuated, allowing a small fleet of Earth ships to penetrate the atmosphere, their arrival turning the tide of the battle. In the heart of the amphitheater, the ceremonial chamber's doors slid open. Greg and Altair emerged, their appearance drawing gasps from all who beheld them. They had become something new, a perfect synthesis of human and Pandronian, their bodies radiating an otherworldly beauty and power. Zyra, her own form now a hybrid of what she once was, and what she had feared, stared at the couple in awe. The futility of her resistance crashed over her like a wave, and she fell to her knees. As the sounds of battle faded, replaced by a stunned silence, Greg and Altair stood hand in hand. They gazed out at the gathered humans and Pandronians, their presence a living symbol of unity and potential. The Pandronian High Council, watching the events unfold from their secure chamber, knew that everything had changed. As they began drafting a proposal for full diplomatic relations with Earth, Dr. Zara's excited voice came over the comm system. "The data from the ceremony," she exclaimed, her words tumbling out in a rush of scientific ecstasy. "It's incredible. The hybrid genetics, they're the key to advancements we've only dreamed of." Greg and Altair shared a look, understanding that their journey was a long way to go. As news of their transformation and its implications began to spread, neither of them could have imagined the far-reaching consequences, or the new threats looming on the horizon. Or the new challenges that awaited them beyond the stars. The victory over the Purist faction marked a turning point for Pandora Prime, but it was merely the beginning of a greater struggle. As the dust settled and the injured were tended to, an urgent transmission from Earth crackled through the communication channels. Admiral Chen's holographic image materialized in the crystal amphitheater, her face grave. "We've detected a massive energy signature approaching our solar system. It's the Zorgon collective, and they're coming in force." Greg and Altair exchanged glances, their newfound hybrid forms still radiating with residual energy from the ceremony. "How long do we have?" Greg asked, his voice steady despite the weight of the news. 3 days at most," Chen replied. "We're mobilizing everything we've got, but it won't be enough. We need Pandora Prime's help." Altair stepped forward, her iridescent skin pulsing with determination. "You'll have it. We stand together now." As the transmission ended, the amphitheater erupted into a flurry of activity. The High Council convened an emergency session, while Dr. Zara and her team pored over the data from Greg and Altair's transformation, searching for any advantage they could gain. Captain Martinez approached the hybrid couple, her eyes gleaming with a mix of awe and respect. "I've assembled a team of our best fighters, both human and Pandronian. We're ready to follow your lead." Greg nodded, his mind already racing with tactical possibilities. "We'll need to coordinate with Earth's forces, establish a unified defense strategy." Over the next 2 days, Pandora Prime became a hive of frenzied preparation. The planet's bioluminescent flora pulsed with an urgency that matched the mood of its inhabitants. Hybrid soldiers trained relentlessly, pushing the limits of their newfound abilities. Engineers worked around the clock, modifying ships and weapons to harness the unique energy signature generated by Greg and Altair's union. As the deadline approached, Greg found himself standing at the observation deck of Pandora Prime's orbital command station. The vastness of space stretched out before him, deceptively calm. Altair joined him, her hand finding his. I never imagined my diplomatic mission would lead to this, she said softly. Greg squeezed her hand, marveling at how natural it felt despite its alien texture. Funny how life works out. A few weeks ago, I was just a soldier on a routine assignment. Now we're the galaxy's best hope, Altair finished, her voice a mix of wonder and trepidation. A series of alarms shattered the moment. Admiral Chen's voice boomed through the station. They're here! Zorgon fleet detected at the edge of the solar system. The response was immediate. Earth's defense fleet, bolstered by Pandronian ships, moved into position. On the surface of both planets, ground-based weapons powered up, their energy signatures visible from space. The Zorgon invasion force was staggering in its size and power. Their ships, resembling massive obsidian shards, cut through space with terrifying efficiency. The outer defenses of Earth and Pandora Prime fell quickly, overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of the attackers. As reports of breached defenses and mounting casualties poured in, Greg felt a surge of inspiration. He turned to Altair, his eyes alight with a daring plan. What if we could use our hybrid abilities on a larger scale? Not just to fight, but to change the very nature of this conflict. Altair's eyes widened as she grasped his idea. You mean replicate the energy wave from our bonding ceremony, but on a cosmic scale? Greg nodded, already moving towards the command center. Dr. Zara, Captain Martinez, I need you both. We have a plan, but it's going to take everything we've got. Within hours, a stealth ship, unlike any other, was prepared. Equipped with phase-shifting technology derived from Greg and Altair's hybrid genetics, it was capable of passing through solid matter. The ship's core was modified to amplify and project the unique energy signature of their bonding. As Greg, Altair, Martinez, and a select team of hybrid soldiers boarded the ship, the weight of two worlds rested on their shoulders. The plan was audacious. Infiltrate the Zorgon command ship, tap into its systems, and broadcast a modified version of the Pandronian peacekeeping energy throughout the entire enemy fleet. The stealth ship slipped past the chaotic space battle, phasing through the hull of the massive Zorgon command ship. Inside, they encountered a world of pulsating biomechanical corridors and strange, undulating surfaces. Stay alert, Martinez warned as they moved deeper into the ship. We don't know how the Zorgons will react to our presence. They didn't have to wait long to find out. Zorgon defenders, insectoid creatures with exoskeletons that seemed to blend with their ship's interior, swarmed towards them. The hybrid team responded with a combination of human combat tactics and Pandronian biokinetic abilities, creating a dazzling display of unified strength. Greg and Altair fought side by side, their movements perfectly synchronized. Greg's military training melded seamlessly with Altair's natural Pandronian agility, creating a lethal dance that the Zorgons struggled to counter. As they battled their way towards the ship's core, the team witnessed the full might of the Zorgon war machine. Through viewports and holographic displays, they saw Earth and Pandora Prime under siege, their combined forces barely holding against the onslaught. Finally, they reached the pulsating heart of the command ship. Altair interfaced with the alien technology, her hybrid physiology allowing her to decipher its complex systems. We're in, she announced, her voice strained with effort. But we need more power to broadcast the energy wave. Greg stepped forward, taking her hands in his. Then let's give it everything we've got. As the rest of the team provided cover, Greg and Altair began an intense bonding process. Their bodies glowed with an otherworldly light, the energy between them building to a crescendo. The ship's core responded, its alien circuitry integrating with their hybrid biology. A massive surge of energy erupted from them, channeled through the ship's systems and amplified beyond measure. It spread outward in a rippling wave, enveloping the Zorgon fleet in its radiance. The effect was immediate and profound. Across the battlefield, Zorgon ships ceased fire. Confused communications flooded the airwaves as the invading forces suddenly found themselves grappling with new emotions and perspectives. In the command ship's core, Greg and Altair maintained their connection, sweat beading on their brows as they pushed themselves to their limits. Through their shared consciousness, they reached out to the Zorgon leadership, offering visions of peace, cooperation, and shared prosperity. As the energy wave subsided, an eerie calm settled over the battlefield. The Zorgon ships hung motionless in space, their weapons powered down. On the command ship, the defending forces lowered their weapons, their compound eyes reflecting a new understanding. Greg and Altair slowly separated, exhausted but triumphant. Martinez approached, her comm link buzzing with incoming messages. "It worked," she said, her voice filled with disbelief and hope. "The Zorgons, they want to talk." As the hybrid team made their way to the command ship's bridge, they knew they stood at the precipice of a new era. The galaxy was about to change, and they would be at the forefront of that change. The bridge doors slid open, revealing the Zorgon leadership. Their alien features were inscrutable, but their body language spoke of curiosity and a willingness to listen. Greg and Altair stepped forward, ready to forge a new path for all their peoples. The fate of 3 species hung in the balance as they began to speak, their words carrying the weight of countless lives and the promise of a future none of them could have imagined just days before.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.